Hello and welcome to this video. Today we're looking at the Old World Toulouse, which is part of the Occitania region in southern France. After a recent trip to this incredible city, I'd like to share my thoughts with you, as I like to do. So Toulouse has a huge history dating back as far as the 8th century BC. It's had many floods, revolutions, with the rise and fall of civilizations. This ancient city was once called Toulouse and the capital to the Volsciatic Versailles, a Celtic tribe living halfway between the Mediterranean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean, who surrendered to Roman rule in 121 BC. It has become known as the Pink City due to the distinctive colour of its buildings, which are primarily constructed from pinkish, reddish terracotta bricks. There seems to be so many old world buildings around this city, and I am particularly interested in how these buildings were once harnessing the Aether energy. As some of you know, there was a repurposing of technologies during the 1800s, and these old technologies were tapping into this Aether. Einstein clearly said in his 1920 lecture in Leiden University, according to the general theory of relativity, space is endowed with physical qualities. In this sense, therefore, there exists an Aether. So I believe that when this Aether was more active, that all these old world buildings were tapping into this energy. Nikola Tesla was also fully aware of this, and the reason why his inventions were so advanced. The reason he was ridiculed by the industrialists and made out to be a crazy pseudo-scientist was because of his old world inventions that could tap into this Aether energy. The first place I visited was St. Stephen's Cathedral, which is Toulouse Cathedral. You got a tremendous sense of awe when you first walked in, that this building was something much greater. The tomb of Saint Serin, also known as Saint Serin, sits on the altar of the cathedral, in whom this cathedral is named after, and was the first bishop of Toulouse. Now we can look at this iconic religious symbolism to be used for prayer and ways people connected to these gods, which indeed it is to the visitor and tourist. But these incredible objects seem to be something so much more. What if this is some sort of generator? Were these precious metals somehow interacting with the frequencies within the cathedral? You have two organs in this building, with the first being built between 1451 to 1475, weighing 13 tons and is 12 metres high and 10 metres wide. How was this organ built with this skill back in this time period? The other organ was installed in 1868 by Aristide Cavalier-Coll. Again, this 1850 to 1900 period. Every organ, every building was created. There was a lot of building at this time, but a lot of it was just reformatted from a previous world. Inside the cathedral there were an Indian group chanting to each saint around the space, which created a bizarre feeling, or they could have been Catholic Indians. Beautiful singing in places, but also sometimes very chilling and reminding me of scenes from 2001 Space Odyssey. But you could really get a sense of how these harmonics could work on a grander scale. The synchronicity of this visit to the cathedral was very interesting. The cathedral has 19 bells, with the largest weighing 3.9 tons and a diameter of 1.84 meters, which is called Etienne Florian and apparently installed in 1876. People who follow the channel will know that these bells had another significance in the old world, and maybe still even used for practices we don't see in the public domain. These bells were once used for very different purposes, and when combined with the choral singing, instrument playing within these buildings, these would create somatic frequencies that could heal the congregations and possibly more. Besides all the other parts of historical deletion in our past, it was between 1939 to 1945 that the nationalist socialist Germans took 175,000 bells from the towers throughout Europe and destroyed many of the towers. Why was there such a desperate attempt to destroy these bells? But when you look at these shrines in this cathedral that are dedicated to these various saints, I feel they are something very different from how most see them. Maybe some sort of healing chamber, a bodily regeneration machine, like a type of old world medbed. All over this cathedral you can see the alignments, and I could observe how the light came through the stained glass and was somehow interacting with the singing, creating a resonance within this space. Some of the stained glass seems like it was original in some places. Although I cannot yet explain what these mechanics are, I feel I'm beginning to understand a language from observing so many of these buildings. What comes to mind is in physics you have something called the observer effect, and especially in quantum mechanics. This was proven through something called the double slit experiment, whereby observing which slit a particle passes through causes it to behave as if it were only going through that one slit. This was proving that from our observation we can influence the behaviour of particles. So does this apply to the ether and how we harness this energy? So once we observe this ether, maybe then it can manifest into an energy. When you look at the old maps of Toulouse, you can see the alignments and see there are some very powerful ley lines running through this city. The Garonne River is the main river that runs through Toulouse and is very powerful. Immediately I thought that surely this power is being harnessed, and then I saw an EDF energy building. But I later found out that they weren't harnessing the energy, they were using it for cooling at their local nuclear power plants. What stood out on the river are the bridges, as they had extra holes called diglouas. These were placed to calm the force of the river during flooding in 1878. Yes, of course, this reason makes sense, but again, this could be a very effective way of harnessing energy. Could there have been an old world energy system reformatted? You have so many interesting structures along this river and so many aerials. You are overwhelmed with ancient buildings in Toulouse, with the oldest being the Basilica of St. Serin. This is an incredible structure that stands here now, but remember, previous to this world, there would have been a sacred site. The current cathedral was built by the first Bishop of Toulouse somehow in 1070, and this was once an ancient route for pilgrims, so the history goes very far back. Interesting how the Romanesque gargoyles are on the outside of the buildings, with every face being different. Although these were used to disperse rainwater, I believe they are something much more. The word gargoyles in French means channel. Yes, they could have been a channel of water, but what if they are a channel to something far greater, tuning into a frequency that we don't yet understand? The moment stepping inside this edifice, you are immediately blown away with the sheer scale. This cathedral has been repaired and restored many times, but you can still see many old parts remaining. What were these gold chalices used for? It doesn't settle with me that these were just used for religious purposes. They were used for something far, far greater, and maybe connecting to the astral realms. These feel like they are some sort of frequency machine and create certain somatics. Although I cannot prove this yet, but I cannot accept that these were purely built for people to look at and pray to God. Somehow these precious metals were interacting with the frequencies within this building, and we have become separated from this science over many centuries. I visited many locations, but these are just some of the main places, and the last place I visited was the place of Capital, which is the capital square of Toulouse, which dates back to 1190 AD. This is the main central square and the focal point to the city. Built in neoclassical style, the interior to this building is mind-blowing. It reminded me of the Vatican in Italy and St. Paul's Cathedral in London. But what stood out were the astrological symbols in the square, which are made into an Occitan cross, otherwise known as the Cross of Languedoc, formed by bronze panels inlaid into the pavement. Installed by artist Raymond Moretti in 1997, this felt like a very powerful point and a place that is something much bigger than what we understand. The Occitan cross has become the emblem of the region. It first appears in the coat of arms of the Counts of Toulouse from the 12th century, but its origins are much older. Bringing it up to present day, Toulouse has become the European capital for spaceflight, with many companies based in this city, with the headquarters of Airbus, the Spot satellite system, ATR and Aerospace Valley. But my intuition tells me this is something connected to this old world. And this is by no mistake that this is the aeronautics and aerospace capital of Europe. This is just some of the incredible history from this amazing European city. But this old world is all around us, and it's for us to remember, research and look into these buildings. We have to understand how these frequencies, somatics and symbolism within these buildings operate, because the further we go away from it, the more disconnected from this reality we will become. When we understand this, maybe and possibly we might be able to tap back into this ether. But as I said earlier on in this video, the slit experiment proves that from our observation, we have the ability to change and influence environments around us. There are so many old world buildings in Toulouse, and this is all over Europe, all over the world. We have these buildings, remains, so we can remember our connection to this old world. To think or believe we just built these structures just purely for religious purposes is absolutely ridiculous. There is so much more going on in these structures, these architectural designs. Architecture will affect your well-being, and the buildings we design today disconnect us from our human spirit and allow negative energies to manipulate our physical world. Thank you for watching, everybody, and please subscribe if you haven't already. And remember, I have a members section on the channel where we have a lot more podcasts, various other types of videos, all talking about the old world and various concepts of reality and life. So until the next video, I will see you then.